Welcome to the Handed Down Kitchen, where we bring recipes out of the past and back into the kitchen. We've got a really fun Edwardian recipe for you today for little iced coconut cakes. And as modern as these cakes look, this recipe was published in 1909, which was the same year that Bakelite was invented and Selfridge's department store first opened its doors in London's Oxford Street. We found this recipe in our copy of High-Class Cookery Recipes, which was used by the National Training School of Cookery in Buckingham Palace Road as a training book. The recipe is called coconut fingers, but it does say at the end of it that you can also cut the cakes into fancy shapes, which is where our stars came from. So to make these little cakes, you will need the following ingredients: 113 grams of butter, the same amount of caster sugar, and the same amount of desiccated coconut. 3 eggs, 57 grams of fine plain flour, and half a teaspoonful of baking powder. And for the icing and decoration, you're going to need 3 tablespoonfuls of boiling water, 340 grams of icing sugar that has been sifted, some more desiccated coconut, and some coloured sugar. As with most sponge cake recipes, the first thing to do is to cream together your butter and your sugar. So cream these together until they're light and fluffy. Then take one of your eggs and crack it in. Mix this together with your butter and sugar until it's fully combined. Next, add in just a little of your plain flour and stir this in to firm up the mixture. Pour in most but not all of your coconut and then mix it in to combine. By now the cake mixture will start to get quite stiff. Crack in the other 2 eggs and mix them in, followed by the rest of the flour, the baking powder and the coconut. And that's your sponge mixture ready. Now grease a Swiss roll tin and line it with some baking paper. Then grease the top of the paper quite liberally, as this mixture does tend to stick. Pour in your cake mixture and just even it out across the tin. Pop it into the oven, preheated to 180 degrees Celsius, which is 350 Fahrenheit or gas mark 4, for about 20 minutes to bake. As soon as your cake comes out of the oven, lay out a sheet of baking paper and sprinkle it all over with more coconut. While it's still warm, flip your cake onto the coconut and peel off your baking paper. As you wait for your sponge to cool down, make the icing. And this is just a normal glacé icing really. So pour your sifted icing sugar into a saucepan, set over a very low heat. Add in your 3 tablespoonfuls of boiling water and mix the 2 together until they're combined. If you think it's too thick to use to coat, just mix in a drop more water until you're happy with the consistency. Then quickly pour the icing onto your slab of sponge cake, and this has to be done quite fast as the icing is very quick to set. Smooth the icing out using a palette knife that has been dipped in boiling water, but don't worry too much about making it perfect, the toppings will cover up any uneven areas. And before the icing gets cold and sets, cut your cake into fingers, or as the book says, fancy shapes. We're cutting half of ours into fingers and the other half into stars using a shaped cutter. Now your cakes are ready, the only thing that's left to do is to add your toppings, and the recipe recommends either using coconut or coloured sugar, and we're using both. If you want to make some coloured sugar as we did, just take about a cupful of granulated sugar, squeeze in a tiny drop of food colouring and gradually mix it in until you have a nice even colour throughout. And they're done! This is such a lovely little antique recipe. You would not think it was 111 years old if you saw these sold in the shops today. The Edwardians really loved their coconut and these have so much flavour to them. The sponge is lovely and buttery and you can cut them into whatever shapes you like, add different flavours. You can change the colour of the icing or the sugar. There's so much fun to be had with this recipe. We hope you enjoyed this video. If so, please leave us a like, and if you'd like to see us recreate more antique recipes, be sure to subscribe to our channel. You can also find full instructions for this recipe and many more on our website, linked in the description box below.